So today we will focus on, we will provide insights on the initiatives, the strategies and best practices Mississippi State University has taken to improve diversity in research and innovation. So we have the pleasure of having speakers that will also highlight how research and innovation is dealing with opportunities in agriculture and engineering. But first of all, let me introduce the team of the Enrich project. I am Paulo Martinez. I am facilitator and moderator. I am today with Mende Yangden, working with us on the organization and the technical facilitation of the meeting, and Claire Chen, the director at Encura. I give the floor to you, Claire, to introduce the Enrich project.
Thank you so much, Paulo. Good morning and good evening from my side as well, and warm welcome to our wonderful speakers from Mississippi State University today. My name is Claire Chen, and I am the Director of Global Initiative at Encura, National Council of University Research Administrators. We are based in Washington, D.C. And let me just give a very brief overview of our project, Enrich in the USA, which is a part of a larger global initiative, Enrich, the European network of research and innovation centers and hubs, which started beginning of 2017. It's been 3 years now, with the target country, USA, China, and Brazil. It is funded by the European Commission through its funding program for research and innovation, Horizon 2020. As of beginning of 2021, this initiative will be expanded, covering also India, Africa, and Latin America. We are offering a variety of networking, information sessions, connecting events, and services to bring European researchers, innovators, startups closer together with the world to mutually benefit from each other's impact, commercialize research, and boost innovation overall as our end goal. Today, Enrich in the USA is hosting this information session to get an insight and wisdom from 4 of our speakers to talk about diversity and resources Mississippi State University can offer to bring us together closer to collaborate internationally and achieving meaningful research impact. I look forward to hear from our guests. And now,
just briefly, sorry, Claire, I've noticed that we have been joined also by Joanna from our team. Thank you, Joanna, for joining. The team leader at the DLR, the German aerospace industry, and Joanna has been following and supporting and coordinating all the activities for the project. So thank you for managing to join briefly. Joanna, I don't know if you want to add something before we introduce all our speakers. Joanna?
Thank you so much, Paulo and Claire. Yeah, so actually we are in the final stages of our first phase, so that is why we are really working hard at the moment to wrap up everything with the Enrich in the USA project, which officially will end soon, which is tomorrow. And then we are reopening all the collaboration again for the next follow-up phase, and that is why we are really working a lot behind the scenes at the moment to continue our efforts. So that's why I just wanted to quickly say hi. And also thank really our speakers today for taking part in this great info session. I think this is just the beginning of many more info sessions to come and a lot of collaborations. We are grateful for another 3.5 years follow-up of Enrich in the USA, and we'll continue these collaborations and efforts. I leave you in the wonderful hands of Claire from our Enrich in the USA DC Center and our facilitator, Paulo Martinez. And yeah, we talk soon.
Thank you, Joanna. Let's go directly into the core of today's speech. It's a great pleasure to have our panelists. And Claire, can you briefly introduce us our
Yes.
fantastic
I'll be
speakers.
honored to. And we have four wonderful speakers from Mississippi State University, including Dr. Julie Jordan, who is the Interim Vice President for Research and Economic Development at Mississippi State University, as the Chief Research Officer for Mississippi's leading research university and land-grant institution. She oversees a growing and increasingly diverse research portfolio. Dr. Jordan also served as Associate Vice President for International Programs and Executive Director of Mississippi State University's International Institute. She has worked with major funding agencies, university leaders, and the Office of Research Economic Development to expand the university's multifaceted partnership and collaborative relationship around the world. Welcome, Julie. And I think after Julie's talk, we will go to Dr. Tonya Stone, who is Associate Professor in the Mechanical Engineer Department at Mississippi State University. Additionally, she holds the Dr. Oswald Rendon-Herrero Diversity Professorship and was recently named Associate Director for Computational Engineering Mechanics at the Center for Advanced Vehicular Systems. In addition, Dr. Stone has 8 years' experience as a lead mechanical engineer for Dow Chemical Company, where she was responsible for the mechanical equipment design on several multi-million-dollar projects for Dow plant facilities worldwide. Dr. Stone's research interests are primarily focused on nanoscale material behavior and multi-scale structural property relations of a variety material systems. She is a member of the Mineral, Metals, and Materials Society, the American Society for Mechanic Engineers, the Society of Women Engineers, and the National Society of Black Engineers. In 2019, her research efforts were recognized by her department as a recipient of the 2018 Mechanic Engineering Outstanding Senior Faculty Research Award. Welcome, Dr. Stone. We're honored to have you here. And then the last two parts of our Mississippi State University presentation will be co-presented by both Eric Hill and Jeremy Clay. Eric Hill served as the director of the Center for Entrepreneurship and Outreach at Mississippi State University. In this role, Eric assists students, faculty, and staff in developing business models to transform invention into profit-seeking innovation. Under his leadership, MSU's entrepreneurial pipeline has grown more than threefold, launching more than 100 new startups annually and helping them raise nearly $1 million private capital each year. Eric found his passion for technology startup at age 16 when he founded HillTech, a web solution firm that grew to support clients in 15 states before acquisition after 5 years. He is also co-founder of CoFlight, an investment-backed aviation software company, and has led operations of 4 other startups. Jeremy Clay is the director of MSU's Office of Technology Management, the unit charged with efficiently capturing, protecting, managing, and accelerating the commercialization of university-owned and generated intellectual property. Clay has a thorough understanding of the complex issues associated with successful IP management and has broadened Mississippi State University's commercialization and technology transfer initiatives. Jeremy is a licensed patent attorney with experience helping small and large companies protect and advance innovations. Formerly an entrepreneur, Jeremy gladly sold a small asphalt maintenance company after passing the bar exam. Very impressive indeed. And now the floor is yours. Julie, please start your presentation.
Oh, before Julie starts, I would like our panelists to know more about our listeners. So if you don't mind, Julie, I have a question for our participants. Ask them to grab their mobile phones and use the code that's above the slide that I am showing. So it's menti.com on their mobile phone browser and use the code 4056371 to say what country are you in right now, so to see where people are connecting from. And the same system will be used later for submitting Q&A questions to our panelists. So it's important that all participants, if they want to interact with our panelists, register into the system and submit their first answer. We have another couple of quick questions before we give the floor to Dr. Jordan. So while answers are streaming in, I, in a second, will pass to the next question that's more about, what sector are you from? It's about, are you from an institution, from a research organization, from business? And that's coming in a second. I just was giving more time to participants. So academia, that's university, government, industry, non-profit, other sector. Here is again quite an easy way to answer. You just choose, and like in a table of snooker or pool, these little blue balls start arriving from the bottom in the left, and they hit whatever they find on their way. So we have a majority of people from the academia. And if you are in doubt, you could be from choose other. See who else is. Just remind how we are voting. Use your browser from the mobile phone or also from the computer, and write www.menti.com, and then the code is 4056371. It's written on the top of the slides where we are working. You will also see other slides that don't have this code. Yeah, we have some nonprofit, other, and academia. If you are in the research world, let's see what area of research you are in. So medicine, healthcare, food and agriculture, physics and engineering, energy, electronics, IT communication, big data and AI, other. Again, I remind people that the code is 4056371, and they can use menti.com. And while you will be listening to the speakers, I will remind you that the code is menti.com and 4056371. But for the Q&A, you can submit a question. You will see the name of the speaker next to their photo of the video. So we can see the names of Eric, Tonya, Julie, and Jeremy. And you can just submit a question if it's specific to some of the speakers, adding @ and then the surname when you are writing the question. With the system on your mobile, you can also see all the other questions that people are submitting, and put a like if you like very much a question, so it will be put at the top when we do the Q&A. So thank you very much for all the information. Here is the code, and I now give the floor to Julie Jordan to introduce with her high-level remarks the university and our speakers. I remind the importance of this session. We are talking about diversity and inclusion in a university, and how this makes the life and the work and the capacity much richer in terms of interacting, in terms of working together. So it's a very important topic for all of us, and I heard that it's really at the top of the agenda for the university as an issue. So let's hear Dr. Julie Jordan.
Thanks very much, Paolo. I will just add that we're at Mississippi State University. We're honored to be part of today's discussion, and hope that you'll find what we share valuable, and hope that you'll hear something that sparks some interest and aligns with your ideas for partnerships. We are very interested in expanding our partnerships. So when the slides come up, you'll see our email addresses both at the beginning and the end, and feel free to connect with me or any other of my panelists, Jeremy, Eric, or Tonya, either one. So I think, Claire, you're getting the slides up here just in a second. To start, I will just share a little bit about Mississippi State University. We are the flagship institution, the largest institution in the state of Mississippi. We have approximately 23,000 students, and I'm pleased to say that even with the pandemic situation that we're in, our enrollment is up for this year. So we're thrilled to have more students this year than ever before. We are home. This slide has our contact information, so snap a picture, but also we'll show this again at the end. So this gives you an idea, I think, of the size of our institution. As far as U.S. institutions go, we're I would say a mid-sized institution with some 1,400 faculty and over 3,000 staff. We are an R1, very high-level research institution with over $260 million in research expenditures in the last year. My office, by the name of my office, the Office of Research and Economic Development, I think you can tell that we are very intentional about our mission of moving technology and inventions from the lab to commercialization. And you'll hear much more about that from Jeremy and Eric. But also, as part of the flagship institution in our state, we're very focused on having a positive impact on our citizens and our communities. As you're thinking about perhaps whether Mississippi State's a good fit for perhaps a partnership, I wanted to share with you just what we call our research focus areas. We've kind of divided things up. These are strengths of ours. So you see precision agriculture, you see food, water, that's because of our legacy in agriculture and engineering. But you also see social disparities and economic opportunities and sustainable and renewable environment. So there's a wide range. We are a comprehensive university with 8 colleges in our academic programs. And we operate our research through our colleges, but also I would say that we operate through centers and institutes. To learn more about Mississippi State University, you can go to www.msstate.edu. But also on this slide, weringtrue.missstate.edu is a great way to have short snippets of some of our research strengths. This will give you an idea of the breadth of research centers and institutes that we have at Mississippi State. We have the Cobb Institute of Archaeology that travels and does work in the Middle East and Eastern Europe and North Africa. We have the Social Science Research Center. We rank 12th in the United States in institutions performing social science research. And within we ran our high performance computing collaboratory is home to the 4th fastest supercomputer in the country right now. So we have a wide range, and I just wanted to share this with you to kind of spark some interest without taking up too much of your time. I want to get now, so with introducing Mississippi State to you, get straight to our next presenter, and that's Dr. Tonya Stone. So next slide. And Paulo, did you want to say something you want us to move through?
Yeah, well, I can briefly just add, what strikes is the diversity that of the topics that you're covering, some from very high level, deep research on precision agriculture, at the same time, a strong focus on local community development and topics of social disparities. So it would be interesting also to hear from the next presentation how this match is a perfect cocktail. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Tonya.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Julie. Well, the title of my slide is Advancing Women in Engineering, but I'm also going to be touching on diversity as well. But before I jump into things, I did want to mention the Dr. Oswald Rendon-Herrero Diversity Endowed Professorship that I've held since August of 2018. This professorship was established by Mr. Herbert Johnson, who is an African-American graduate of civil engineering at Mississippi State University. And so the purpose of this endowed professorship is really to help to cultivate an environment of inclusiveness and academic excellence for the successful development of minority students, as well as faculty in engineering. And so I'm very proud to hold that professorship. And it's named in honor of his of Mr. Johnson's civil engineering graduate professor. And so that was a nod to him and his mentoring of him as a graduate student at Mississippi State. It was mentioned in my bio, some of the different roles that I've held in industry, academia, and research. I'm sorry, next slide, Julie. And one commonality in all of these roles is that there are very few people who look like me, female and African American. There's still a lack of gender and diversity in tech employment in general. Whether society or educational institutions, corporations, or any other reasons or entities that one may choose to blame, the fact remains that there is only a small percentage of women in tech, and an even smaller percentage in leadership roles. For example, women make up 50% of the workforce, and only 3% of CEO positions are held by women. And so this just exemplifies the gross inequity in gender diversity. A report published by the National Action Council on Minorities in Engineering stated that African Americans comprise only 5% of all engineering bachelor's degrees achieved, with the same percentage in the engineering workforce that's shown on this slide. The Bagley College of Engineering at Mississippi State University is committed to the growth and development of our diversity initiatives, which includes, assisting our students, mentoring, and helping them transition into the engineering profession. I think we advanced a little too fast. It is through that commitment to our African American students that our enrollment has is at 11%. I think we need to go back one slide. And the African American students have achieved 8.2% of all of the bachelor degrees awarded at Mississippi State University for the 2019-2020 academic year. So we're really proud of that number. According to another report by the Congressional Joint Economic Committee, female engineers only represent about 14% of the total engineering workforce. The low numbers of women practicing in the engineering profession can be discouraging, but the Bagley College of Engineering is working to change that situation. In engineering, our undergraduate female enrollment rates are up and graduate enrollment rates are above the national average. For the 2019-2020 academic year, 23.7% of our bachelor's degrees in engineering were awarded to female students in MSU. The Bagley College of Engineering is hiring more female professors, conducting teacher education workshops, offering outreach and mentoring programs that teach elementary and high school girls the reason to consider engineering as a profession. We've seen a steady increase in the percent of female engineering professors in our college. In 2017, 14.2% female, and 2018, 16.1, and 2019 at 17.2. So although we're seeing some growth, we do recognize that there is work to be done. As an engineering faculty member, I have served as head of several search committees for new faculty, and we actively try to recruit females into our positions. And in academia, it's very difficult. Frequently, we just don't get the number of applicants that we're hoping. Out of a pool of 80 plus, we're lucky to get 3 to 5 female applicants for the tenure track position. And just to kind of point out some of the challenges, one female researcher that was interested in the position that we were trying to recruit for, she had a lot of concerns about family balance on the tenure track, because they're, during the tenure track, that a lot of times for women, that's when the more productive childbearing years are. And so it's a conflict, if you're trying to get your career started. And so sometimes that can be seen as an obstacle if you don't think you can get the support that you need. The problem, though, is not simply recruitment of women into engineering. There's been a focus over the years to increase the pipeline. We've been working to try to encourage more girls into engineering careers. However, there does seem to be an issue regarding retention and promotion of women in engineering. And so the statistics that you see on the slide, these statistics come from SWE, the Society of Women Engineers. Just to point out a couple of them, over 32% of women switch out of STEM degree programs in college. Only 30% of women who earn bachelor's degrees in engineering are still working in engineering 20 years later. Of 30% of women who have left the engineering profession, cite organizational climate as the reason. And so another one that's interesting too, this 61% of women report that they have to prove themselves repeatedly to get the same level of respect and recognition as their colleagues. And so these are just some of the issues that SWE has identified through surveying large groups of women in engineering to kind of get a better understanding of some of the challenges that are being faced. So there needs to be a culture shift. This pie chart is also from some SWE statistical data. It indicates that women are very relationship based. There seems to be a lot of unconscious bias. One thing that's interesting from this slide, there is this assumption that the primary issue with women in engineering and in leadership positions is balance, whether it's family life balance. However, from SWE survey, they found that from interviewing women, that women tend to stay in positions due to other factors. So, it's one of the 24% mentioned growth potential as one of the leading reasons. Empowering work culture, that's at 23%. So that's nearly half, that's nearly 50% of the reasons given for being able to retain women in engineering. And then personal relationships with coworkers is next highest at 18%, and then benefits is 17%. So although work-life balance is an important issue, there are, recognizing the value of all employees and supporting growth is important to help build that culture to be able to retain women in engineering, addressing issues that are hindering the advancement of women as well as other diverse groups of people. Because as you can see, the potential for growth and just being valued, it serves a lot, and it's an important issue. As well as providing funding to support initiatives to study and advance diversity. So overall, females want jobs that align with their values, that offer greater opportunities and growth, in addition to competitive salary and flexibility. Salaries on there at 8%, higher salaries and raises, but some of the key things that are usually highlighted as the most important points, although important, you can see from this data that was collected from SWE that there are a lot of other important factors as well that I think a lot of times might be overlooked. Next slide. As I wrap up, I wanted to point out some of the resources that MSU offers faculty and students to be successful and to help grow our students, especially as it relates to innovation and in support of our research programs. We have research working groups. These are faculty support groups that help get different faculty from different divisions of engineering, to come together for common interests on different research topics. So it's a more of a collaborative effort, and these working groups have been successful at generating proposals and funding opportunities for those faculty. They also work with our research centers. There are research travel awards available to faculty members as well as to students. These are also important resources for the successful development of not just, this is for all of our faculty and staff, not just for underrepresented faculty. Diversity programs, there are a lot of diversity initiatives at all levels of the college that are leading to faculty and student success. There's the Entrepreneurship program, which you'll be hearing about later after my talk. That's been a very successful program that's been helpful for our students as well as for faculty members as well. Faculty student affiliated research centers. Dr. Jordan mentioned the numerous research facilities that we have at Mississippi State University. The picture I'm showing on my slide is of the Center of Advanced Vehicular Systems. That's the center where I'm an associate director of computational engineering mechanics. And we have a diverse group of researchers at this center. It's very involved as far as student workers. We have a large percentage of our students, not just graduate students, but as well as undergraduate students involved in research projects. And we also have faculty members as well as staff researchers affiliated with the research centers. So all of these resources are what's allowing Mississippi State's research programs to be very successful. And lastly, the patent commercialization support, which you're also about to hear about next. So I just wanted to point out these resources, which have been important for our college. And I think this leads into our next talk on technology transfer.
Yes, very inspiring and intriguing in the sense of the focus that is being put in increasing the presence of women and especially of African Americans in the university. So it will be interesting to also talk about this in the Q&A, and also about how to address the challenges that you were identifying from the survey that you did in terms of the follow-up employment opportunities. So, Julie, Jordan, if you want to introduce our next speakers, we are getting into the entrepreneurial dimension of and experience of the university, if I understand well.
Great. Yes, thank Paulo. And I will turn the presentation over to Jeremy Clay and Eric Hill.
Thanks, Julie. My name is Jeremy Clay. I'm the director of MSU's Office of Technology Management. We're the tech transfer arm of the university. And I'm very pleased to be speaking with my colleague and friend Eric Hill, who's director of the Center for Entrepreneurship and Outreach. And next slide, please. I would like for this, to the extent it can be, to be a conversation. So if there are questions about what we're doing, please send them in on Menti or on the chat as they come up, and we can address them as they arise. And sort of initially, this is not my usual sermon about what tech transfer is, but I just want to have a brief kind of discussion of what tech transfer is, and then a little bit about what entrepreneurialism is. Tech transfer.
As you mention it, Jeremy, just let me remind all the others 1 second about the code and www.menti.com, and the code is 4056371. I meant to do that before you were starting to speak, but so that everyone knows where to submit the questions as you reminded them. Thank you. Sorry for the brief interruption.
No, that's great. Thank you, Paulo. Today we're going to talk more about communication and how we try to spread the word about what we are doing. And in the tech transfer office, we are working with researchers at all steps of the process, and that can be bringing in a company that has a need and connecting them with a researcher or collaborator. It can be taking a technology that a researcher at the university has already created and finding a company on the back end to be a collaborator or a licensee for that. And there are many stakeholders. I'm very pleased to be working for Dr. Jordan in the Office of Research and Economic Development, but the truth is our office works for everyone. That is students, researchers, administration, companies, stakeholders in the legislature, people on the street, faculty that we work with at other universities. So it's very important for us, because we have such a diverse group of stakeholders, to be able to communicate the right messages to the right groups at the right time. And that also holds true for the entrepreneurship side of the operation. Eric, do you want to say a few words about that?
No, it's absolutely right. Good morning, good afternoon to wherever you are in the world, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. Jeremy's absolutely right. It's a really hard thing to understand all the moving parts that go into taking intellectual property that comes out of a lab, often in a very raw state. The nature of academic research is that it is on the bleeding edge of the edge of knowledge, right? And so oftentimes what has been created, we don't understand how it can fit in the world and change the state of the art, so to speak, in a commercial sense. So to Jeremy's point, all those people are customers or have some role in getting from lab to market. And it's such a simple statement that often gets said in commercialization is this idea of lab to market. But if you think about any product that you buy off the shelf, or I guess off the virtual shelf these days, there's a lot of things that go on inside of you to make that purchase decision. And there's a whole laundry list of things that have to be accomplished from discovery in the lab to that point.
A couple of years ago at MSU, we realized that we were really getting into a good place as far as having resources on campus to support technology transfer and entrepreneurship. But we also realized that there was not a good resource to teach our internal stakeholders, our faculty members and students, what those resources were. And honestly, there were times when I didn't know where the resources were exactly. So we spent a good deal of time putting together this technology transfer inventor's guide, and this is available on our website. But the idea here is that it explains the process for getting that technology out of the lab and into the marketplace. I'm glad to see that Eric has one. And it shows the resources that we have on campus to support that. So if you're a researcher or a student interested in part of this and you have questions about the process, we've got sort of one comprehensive resource that lets people find what we're doing on campus, how to get involved in the process. You know, we found as we kind of built this resource out and gone out to spread the word about it, that maybe the messages aren't received the same way in different parts of campus. So, you know, for example, there may be what I call silos or barriers in certain departments or certain colleges because of traditional reporting structures. So having just a single campus-wide presentation about an entrepreneurship or about the inventor's guide is not going to reach everyone on campus. So we've had to make more detailed or more directed efforts at certain parts of campus to try to get the message out about this. An example of this, something we did recently, was go talk to the graduate student organization. I feel that sometimes professors are preoccupied with things other than innovation and entrepreneurship, but maybe we can reach those grad students and try to get the grad students thinking about bringing this technology out of the lab, and they'll help sort of push, in some cases, push the faculty member towards this, whereas a faculty member might otherwise not be interested. So we're trying to, and this is something that we haven't solved, this is something that we're modifying on the fly as we go. We're trying to find places on campus where there are, for whatever reason, there's an additional need for us to speak more about this and spread the word and try to tap into those audiences to increase our inputs into the process and to increase our outputs at the same time.
Yeah, we're happy to share the guide. We do have a digital copy of that. And while I understand it's for Mississippi State, one thing to note is that you know, when we were putting together that guide, there were components that we worked in from other universities' technology transfer guides and structure for their commercialization. So many universities have similar structure. The other thing is, in the guide, we talk a lot about the commercialization toolkit from a funding perspective, and in many cases, we're referencing some programs run by the National Science Foundation here in the United States. And there are many programs. It's interesting because the more that I talk to people from elsewhere, many countries have modeled innovation funding structures similar to the National Science Foundation here. So there are likely analogous sources of or resources that you would find in this guide. So we do offer that to anybody who has such a desire for an extra 50 pages of reading material.
The second part of this is trying to tailor the message to the audience. And I have come to realize that people at different stages of their career have different motivators and have different reasons for wanting to participate in this process. When I think about early career faculty who are really focused on bringing in research funding and publishing their work, the message that I think is most effective, and Tonya, you may have better insight on this than I do, the message I think is effective is what's circled in green here, that this is a way to multiply your research funding by accessing pools of funding that you otherwise would not have access to. And I think about late career faculty, those who are post-tenure, who've sort of reached the existential questions in life, like why are we doing this? What do I want my impact to be? The pitch is a little different. The sales message there is that this is the way for your work to have societal impact. there's great value in advancing a body of knowledge and creating academic publications about your work. But there's an additional value to getting that work out of the lab and into the marketplace where it can actually help people in a tangible way. And there's also a return on that in the form of royalties that come back as additional income to our inventors. For graduate students, it's a little different. For grad students, I like to say there's sort of two ways this can work for you. If you work with us through this tech transfer process and you work through Enrich's shop, you can, one, either create a job for yourself in the form of a new company when you graduate, or alternatively, and this is something I'm seeing very often, is that if you work through this process as a graduate student, you are more likely to be hired on the back end. Students that work with our office through this commercialization process are very highly desired by industry, and they get hired quickly.
We debated whether this was an appropriate image to show because nobody likes being bored by flowcharts. But there's a key message, a couple key messages that I think this shows. You know, in academics, there's a traditional flow of research where there's a research that happens. Sometimes out of that research, there's a discovery, and ultimately it leads to some publication. And so if you look at this flow chart, I don't have a way to point here, but there's a box that says initial commercialization decision. You know, there's this notion of if there is intellectual property that's meritorious in some way, there's two paths. You can either license it to an outside company, and you can see the blue boxes that follow are a lot shorter path, or there's this crazy idea that you can start a company around it. And what I tell people is the difference is always a risk reward, and that there's when you do the license to a startup, it's basically the same process except that you have to build the company around it. And so the IP is one element, but there's got to be a marketing engine, there's got to be some sort of fulfillment or operations engine, there's a financial component to it. So oftentimes that immediately turns off many people to the idea of starting a company because it is a lot of work. So why on earth would anybody do it? And to Jeremy's point, preaching the right message, it took me probably longer than I should admit to realize that an academic researcher does not necessarily care about the financial gains of a startup company. But to Jeremy's point, there are a ton of reasons to do so. The intrinsic idea of getting research to make societal impact, to make a market impact, is one for sure, and a good one. Jeremy's point also about increasing your financial resources to that commercialization engine adds a different dimension to your CV, and also to that of your graduate students. But there's another angle to this. In academics, there's a perception of with IP or any sort of commercial potential thing of we're going to make it, invent it, throw it over the fence, and I'm going to keep doing the research that I always do. And that's a perfectly fine place to be in, but there's an opportunity there that's often overlooked of interplay between industry and research. There are many great examples of companies that have spun out a university IP that then build a relationship to do sponsored research back with the university. And for the original researcher, they can keep their academic role. And there are ways to manage those sort of conflicts, but also build an engine for an industry partner that they now have that they can work with. So there's this important thing that's missing, which is that when you commercialize technology from a university, it's not a one-way relationship where it's over the fence and we no longer look at it. It can create amazing opportunities to continue to collaborate long-term, because that's what happens, right? When we think about research, fundamentally, it's solving problems that industry either doesn't care to solve because it's very undefined or high risk. The market won't pay for that yet, or it's from the idea that the value of it's unclear, and that's where academics can step in. So all that's to say, when we talk about commercialization at MSU, this idea of appealing to people from the standpoint of there are many reasons you either will want to generate IP and commercialize it or not. But you can't ignore the financial opportunity as well. And when we look at Mississippi, where we often have difficulty with salary recruitment or other competitive angles, entrepreneurship can solve that gap in many ways and make it just as much of a ripe opportunity here as anywhere else in the world. And I firmly stand by that message every day. And that translates to many places around the world as well, as people look at things as a disadvantage that become an amazing opportunity when you look at the research that is there that can be commercialized. So, all right, back to you, Jeremy. I'll stop rambling.
Jeremy, I wanted to just add, if I may, from a faculty and researcher perspective, Eric is correct. I think we do the maroon items very well. That's our focus. We want to get those publications out. And I know both of you have come to, at least the mechanical engineering department has spoken to our faculty members, making us more aware of the commercialization efforts going on at Mississippi State and how you can better support us. So hopefully you are seeing some growth from the engineering faculty in this area. I think a lot of times it's just awareness and getting the word out. And I know you've both been actively working to do that within the College of Engineering and probably other colleges as well. But that's my space. And I know Eric, he speaks regularly every semester to our senior professional development class, also letting the students know about the entrepreneurship opportunities and startup companies that opportunities that are available with support through Mississippi State University. And they usually they get very interested when they hear about the funds, because you guys also, there's funding that's also available to assist with that. But I think we as faculty and researchers, we can all do a little better at focusing on the blue and the green. And so I did want to just point out, you guys have done a great job at making us more aware, myself included, of the opportunities at Mississippi State available in that area.
Well, thanks for that. And I always like to tell Dr. Stone's class about a startup that I started that failed miserably, because I think you can learn better from the failures. So it always gets a bunch of good laughs at watching me put egg on my face of screwing up big time some issues back in the day. So.
But to circle back to the point of one of the points of this presentation, I wanted to sort of talk about how we are managing diversity, inclusion in tech transfer and entrepreneurship, and where we are. So last week, I spent some time going back through the last 5 years of invention disclosures for the university, and here are the data that explain what our diversity and inclusion metrics are. On the left, there's a image that is taken from our University Office of Inclusion and Diversity, and you can see sort of the metrics related to minority and female members of our faculty. On the right, you can see where we are with invention disclosures. We've got 43% minority inventors and 19% female, and this sort of raised a question for me: are female inventors underrepresented in MSU's tech transfer efforts right now? And I think the answer to that is possibly. And that answer means two things. One, it means we need to do some more work in this area. We have, using National Science Foundation's definitions of STEM, we have 29.67% of faculty members who are women in STEM fields. And so you can see, I think about STEM fields as the ones who are most likely to generate some intellectual property that could be the subject of an invention disclosure. So there's an opportunity for us to grow the program here and try to focus on inventors that I know are there on faculty that we are not reaching. So that's an example of a way that our messaging needs to change. I'm not sure exactly how yet, but our messaging needs to change to help recruit more female inventors on campus.
So yeah, on the entrepreneurship side, we looked at the data of funded companies, and it's roughly 30% minority and 30% female. Those stats from a national perspective look pretty good, but when I look at the Mississippi State demographics and compare those, same as Jeremy, there is a statistically relevant gap in in female participation in entrepreneurship. The other thing is we do a lot of work with students here, and we often remind ourselves that at Mississippi State, we still have a lot of first-generation college students that they are the first ones in their entire family to ever go to college. And so, when you think about entrepreneurship, it's a leap to come to college, and then we ask them to take another leap to go jump off a cliff and start a company as their first career choice, and that is a huge gap. It may be a little bit different for a faculty member, but the same idea of the intrinsic, I believe I can do this, exists as well. And so when we look at, to me, when I look at diversity and inclusion in entrepreneurship, there is a whole lot of the upbringing and raising and all these beliefs inside of somebody can do it. And so to me, that's one of the biggest things that we have to work for, and we spend a lot of effort, is to make sure that anybody believes that they can do it, including on the faculty side. And you do that by example. We have a number of fantastic startup companies that have multi-million-dollar valuations led by females or underrepresented populations. And so those, to me, just by having one that I can point to and say, hey, go talk to these people because they're doing it, has made a monumental difference, because people all of a sudden can see themselves in participating in the world in a way they may not have otherwise believed in. And so yes, there is sort of a critical mass issue, and part of that is being aware of making sure that that sort of messaging is filtering into what we are doing every day.
Thanks, Eric. So I think we'll wrap and we'll go to the next slide. So I think that sort of begs to, when we think about entrepreneurship and innovation, and we also think about inclusion and diversity, there's always ways that our team has been talking about improving. So what are some of those ways that we do that? We host any number of seminars on these topics. We are sort of putting our money where our mouth is and investing resources in seed grants on topics like inclusion, diversity, equity, and racism across campus. We're investing in Jeremy's work and Eric's work to promote tech transfer and commercialization across the campus. And then the other things that are a little longer stretch in an academic environment are taking a look at promotion and tenure processes and our evaluation and our incentive structures to make sure that we understand where implicit bias is playing a role. How can we recognize innovation and entrepreneurship? In many of our disciplines, innovation and entrepreneurship is not traditionally recognized in the P&T process. So those are all policy areas that we are actively looking at right now at Mississippi State University, and in trying to improve what we're already doing in being more inclusive and diverse, but also create that academic entrepreneurship environment where all of our students and faculty have a chance to to live up to whatever level of innovation entrepreneurship that they're interested in doing. So having said that, we'll stop, and thanks for the time, and look forward to perhaps connecting with you. Next slide. Here's our contact information. Feel free to email any of us, and we will certainly find the right person to answer your questions or to connect you with, depending upon your interest.
Thank you very much, Eric and Jeremy. I was just capturing one keyword, but we will now open the Q&A. And one of the keywords you talked about, was the fact that for some people it's the very first time they move into a university, and so they have to do the double leap of moving into the idea of entrepreneurship or creating a life. But perhaps we can talk of a third leap when you're talking about doing it as a woman, and the fourth leap, doing it as an African American woman. So as you are the circus for this, you are training the entrepreneurs that can do this quadruple leap. It's fantastic to be talking with you all. So let's hear. First of all, we have some questions. I know that Dr. Tonya Stone has to leave us. So let's start with the first question for Tonya, if it's possible, how can one address the key challenges of growth, potential, and empowering work culture? You know, you mentioned those in your slide, and they represented more than 45% together, including the other one about relationship with your colleagues and so on. How can we start addressing them? What can we learn from Mississippi State University in this?
That's a great question. It's a complicated question, but you know, this is really addressing these issues really needs to start with the leadership and trickle down to that effect. And I know Dr. Jordan can speak some on this as well. But you know, as far as you know, providing funding to look at some of the issues and interests of the faculty or researchers within that organization to understand specifically within that group what some of the challenges and barriers are and how as a culture they can be worked to be improved. Another thing is, you know, as far as the work culture, I know a lot of times with diversity issues, and I'm going to mention my class again. You can also start at the bottom. We try to work with our students, and I have speakers from our diversity office come and speak to the engineering students so that all the students understand the importance of diversity. I think it has been in the culture, and I've experienced it myself where, you know, if it's a diversity issue or, you know, if we want to improve the number of underrepresented females, well, let's go talk to the one female person in the department and have that person lead that initiative, or the one African American person and have them lead that initiative. And I think getting away from that mentality and changing the culture that it's something that we all need to work to do helps to address these challenges and key issues, because as long as it's seen as, you know, it's just an issue for the minority participants or for the female participants, then it's going to be really hard to change that outlook. And so I think that, and so being educated in that and making sure our leaders are educated in that as well helps address those challenges.
I'm going to give the floor to Claire for the next question, but I can comment on this, that as we say in Italian, tutto il mondo è paese. All the world is quite the same everywhere. So all the challenges that you were discussing about STEM, women are very similar all over the world. So it's very nice that we are connecting to address them together and learn from each other on what are the best strategies. Thank you. So the next question for Tonya.
Tonya, can you please share your experience and wisdom with us? How did you decide to become an engineer and excel and become a top researcher in your field?
That's an interesting question. So that started probably a long time ago. That started over 30 years ago. And as probably a junior high school student, I was always interested in just kind of learning how things work and in designing things. I always say I used to want to be an architect. I was very interested in looking at, you know, floor plans and just looking at those drawings. I got drawn to engineering actually through programs at Mississippi State University in my senior year. Mississippi State's always, you know, just looking back, has offered like summer programs that were targeted at underrepresented students in the community. And so I remember participating in engineering programs as a high school student. I got a job working one summer and in one of our HPC centers, research centers, as a high school student, and I was working along with some professors and their graduate students. And so it was those types of interactions that really steered me into going into engineering. And once I was there in engineering, I'll just continue. I had a professor that just kept saying, "You need to get your PhD. You need to get your PhD." And as a student, I wanted to graduate and get a job. And so that's what I did. But I think that voice was always in the back of my mind, because after working for 8.5 years, I did decide to go back and get the PhD and become a professor. And so that was something a seed a professor had planted as an undergraduate student in my head. And so I think those interactions, you know, they may not even seem like a big deal at the time, but the things that we say to our students, they do matter. They, you know, for all the students that you feel like may not listen or have any direct impact on their, I've found there are others that really do, you do have a profound impact on. So I experienced that, and that had a lot to do with where I am now.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. The importance of mentorship.
It is.
And connecting the dots between all
Connecting
these
the dots.
experiences.
They're all over the place.
Yes. Well, do we have other questions for Tonya? I think the others are also relating to Tonya, but so yes, I can move to, for instance, let's see. Sorry, I'm just looking. Yeah, shall we have this one, Claire?
I think so.
What can other institutions learn from Mississippi State University's diversity and inclusion approach? What sets Mississippi State University apart from other institutions? And then we let you go.
Yeah, maybe I'll try to take that.
I was going to say, I think that's probably a question for Dr. Jordan.
Yeah, I think one thing I would say for all of us is that it's a journey, and there's no one approach, and there's no end to just continuing to address these issues. They're very challenging, complex social issues that we need to continue to look at. Tonya and I had a conversation yesterday, and I finished my engineering degree a number of years before Tonya did. And so, I mean, we've been talking about getting more women in STEM and more diversity in STEM fields for, I don't know, 40 years. So I think it's something we'll probably be talking about for another few decades. What have we done? I think we continue to pay attention to it. I think we have to pay attention to it. I think we have to be intentional. It has to start from the top. President Keenum regularly talks about inclusion and diversity and focuses on Mississippi State being a university for all the people, no matter who you are, no matter where you're from or what your background is. And our number one job is to help all of our students be successful and complete, no matter who they are. So that starts at the top, and that message permeates all the way through the system. So number one, it's got to start at the top. That messaging has to start at the top. And then along the way, you've got to put some resources. You got to put some money where your mouth is and put some resources in to support these programs that promote women's opportunities, that bring diverse faculty to research opportunities that may not have had otherwise. So, for example, focusing an endowment program that Tonya sits in an endowed chair for a minority faculty member. We do seed grant programs for equity and diversion in activities and research on campus. We're offering leadership programs that advance women opportunities. We have an Office of Institutional Diversity and Inclusion that keeps a focus on it. We also have the President's Council on the Status of Women that also takes a look at what's going on with women on the campus. So all of those efforts sort of combined, I don't know if they set us apart from others, but I would say if one thing we all have to do is be intentional with this effort.
Great. Thank you very much. So it has to start and spark from the top, and it has to be supported, and resources, policies have to go and lead in that direction. And you've been doing this for more than, well, now 40 years, you say. So that's the lesson, to be thorough and patient and have the North Star clear in your plan. Claire, what question would you like to pick for our panelists?
I would like to have this conversation all day with Jordan and Tonya, and I know we have to also give the floor to Eric and Jeremy in this conversation as well as the men on the other side of the aisle. But I want to ask Eric and Jeremy both, please feel free to answer. Could inclusion and diversity make a difference in the effectiveness of technology transfer at university?
One of the strengths of everything we do is diversity, because the more perspectives we have on a project or on a technology, the more likely we are to make it work. I mean, our diversity on these projects is a huge strength, because the more people, different backgrounds you have working on it, the more likely we are to arrive at an answer that's going to be effective and actually work.
You know, the interesting thing about inclusion and diversity is that it's the sum of all the little things that make the difference, right? And it's in business, that diversity of opinion and background is what gives you strength, because you see opportunities that others may have ignored or not seen. I'll give you a perfect example. We had a startup company that was working on drones that help aid in installing wireless internet towers and connectivity. And to me, that opportunity would have never been seen if we weren't in a very rural state where running fiber optics is expensive and cost prohibitive, and we have a lot of wireless internet point-to-point networks. And these guys were able to see that opportunity, and their team was able to start a company around it, and they would have probably been nowhere else in the United States that would have been better prepared to see that opportunity. And so diversity and inclusion of different backgrounds and different perspectives is what gives you these amazing business opportunities. And that's a $5 million valued company now. And so making sure that those opinions have representation and people see themselves in that equation is a big component of it.
And I would add that when we think about, we think about diversity in terms of race and ethnicity oftentimes, but I would echo what Eric's saying. The diversity of opinions and backgrounds and experiences is just as important. We really emphasize interdisciplinary teams and team science, and are making a concerted effort to bring social scientists to almost every engineering project we have now. It's extraordinarily important to bring social scientists to the table when we don't, and at the beginning and not at the end. So we're also, diversity means, has a broad meaning.
Interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary, and it's good news for me, Claire, and Mende, because we are social scientists. So
there you go.
we also know what you mean, because of course in the end, technology is managed by humans. So if you don't know how humans think, the technology may not, you may have failures just because you think that technology solves things by itself. Thank you for that. So let's see. We have had this as a question answered. Let's see. I have a question for you, Dr. Jordan.
Yes. That's a great
From
question.
your personal experience, what's your best advice for young researchers to achieve leadership positions in research, STEM, and innovation? So we have this one and another last question, and then a quick evaluation on the Menti polling.
So I think that having the technical background first, which we all would have, I think, from this perspective of this question, you need to study leadership probably as consistently and persistently as you have studied your technical discipline. Leadership is not something that just happens. I can't tell you how many books I've read over the last 30 years, how many seminars I've listened to. Leadership doesn't just happen. So I would encourage any scientist or engineer, someone with a STEM background, it's difficult sometimes to be a leader, and don't underestimate the need to study leadership and what works in different environments. I think Paulo's great point. One of the reasons I got into shifted from a technical to sort of a social science for my PhD is that I learned very quickly that getting devices and machines to do things, I was working in computer networking with, okay, that was a great challenge, that was fun, but if I couldn't get the people to use those, it didn't matter, it had no impact. And so I began to actually study, how do I get people to do things and change behaviors to do things different? And that studying people and how they behave and how to get people to change behaviors led me into, certainly has helped me in my leadership roles significantly.
One last question from Claire.
So I saw this top question from one of our participants, and it's also my question to Eric and Jeremy. How can we have a copy of the Tech Transfer Inventors Guide of the Mississippi State University?
I just go to our website.
Great.
I'll
It's the
put a link to it in the chat.
Okay, perfect. That will be fantastic. And Paulo, do you have any other pressing questions you see from
Oof.
the list of questions coming in?
Well, there
this
are more
one-
questions.
Yeah, there are more questions, but there's this one I want to ask, also from my own personal perspective for Mississippi State University in our audience today. What's the best way to start collaborating with Mississippi State University? Is it through a U.S. funding program or a EU funding program?
I would say the best way to get started is just shoot us an email. I'll put my email in the chat again, and have an idea about what your goals or objectives would be, because we could collaborate without funding. It depends upon what we're trying to accomplish. We could start with an academic program and maybe do some exchanges, maybe a Erasmus funding on your side, or we perhaps could host. Travel, I know right now is challenging. So, and we can, depending upon the discipline and the science, we would search for appropriate funding opportunities to create a collaboration. So best thing to do is reach out, start the conversation with us. We're happy to have that.
Perfect. Thank you.
And all your contact details are also in the webinar, recorded webinar that we have, so people can also connect. And I have just one last question for all our participants to reflect on where do you position yourself with these statements. You can say you strongly agree or you are totally in disagreement with the statement. So I am inspired by this session. I have a clearer understanding of the issues on diversity in innovation and research. I am interested in exploring partnership opportunities with Mississippi University. So let's get the floor to send and submit ideas and questions, so we get the position of participants. I certainly am very interested because we have in Tuscany a very strong cluster of precision farming and working on combining technology with the creation of a community of practice between all the different actors of the system. So it's would be nice to share experiences. So this is the outlook we are getting. Very high inspiration, clearer understanding, and yes, 4 out of 5 is a good. So we have people interested in collaborating with the university. And with that said, I think we are getting to the closing slide where we want to really thank Dr. Julie Jordan, Dr. Tonya Stone that had to leave us for another meeting, and Jeremy Clay and Eric Hill for the precious information. Claire, the floor is yours to close the session.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Paulo, for facilitating and moderating. Thank you especially to our esteemed speakers for really repeat the messages, information that we want to get it out there, the importance of diversity and inclusion in university research innovation ecosystem, especially now. So if any of our participants have questions about collaborating with Mississippi State University, I'm sure we have quite a lot of interest. And please feel free to contact us or contact the Mississippi State University team directly. You will have the recording of this webinar and also the presentation, so you will have the contact information. And again, with that, I close our wonderful session. Thank you. Thank you again to our speakers, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Keep innovating.